Many artists get their music played on the radio because they did one thing, and that was hiring an independent radio promoter. Bryan, although he's worked for major labels, currently works at Empire, he's also been an independent radio promoter for a great part of his career as well. Yeah. There's been a lot of artists that have hired radio departments at labels who were independent artists that still hired radio departments simply to help them get on the radio. Macklemore is a good example of somebody who was an independent artist, but he hired the radio department at Warner, it was, right? Who then worked his record to get, Thrift Shop to become as popular as it was. So you don't necessarily have to be signed to a major label to hire a radio department, and you don't necessarily, you can also hire an independent radio promoter when you're an unsigned artist. So if you got the money and you got the music and you're like, I got to get on radio, this is the way to get in cars, it's a way for people to hear my music even more. Because if you think about it, and tell me how you agree, this is how I like to use an analogy. A DSP is like a CD collection, right? You have to go find, you're like, I'm going to go listen to that CD now. It doesn't just play. It doesn't just go in front of your face and you hear it. You have to say, I'm going to go listen to this and go pull out your CD collection. Radio is going to play music. You don't know what it's going to play, and you discover new music on radio. Sure, you can discover new music on playlists, right? But you have to go find a playlist that you like and trust the person curating that playlist, right? So you're searching for it. Radio is more of a laid-back experience where, the trusted source, the DJ, is introducing new music to you. And I think radio is becoming a lot better with that now, because I think, you have some terrestrial radio where they are limited to their certain playlists, but then you have a lot of internet radio. Then you have companies like Dash or Sirius XM. They have a lot of DJs and a lot of shows where you can say, you know what, that DJ always plays hot music, I'm gonna listen to him. So I'm an independent artist, I have the money, I have the record. How do I find an independent radio promoter?
That's a great question. Somebody mentioned this to me probably about 10 years ago, and somebody said radio promoters, independent radio promoters are like a secret society.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not like they can look you up on the internet. It's not like somebody's going to, just hand the phone number over to you. And it was always treated like that. And I didn't think about it until somebody really broke it down to me. And I think what happens is what people fail to understand is that an independent radio promoter is almost also like a consultant, and it's also with a consultant and a salesperson at the same time. Because sometimes independents are brought on from a major label as an extension, because sometimes the bandwidth, they can't handle the bandwidth.
Right.
Too many releases, too many priorities, too many artists. You got to promote at the same time. Sometimes, I think most of the times I look at it as, and why we've been around so long, as either an executive promotion for a representative for a label or an independent promotion person, is the fact is that you're maintaining the value of a relationship that nobody has access to. And I think we talked about it earlier. It's about having access and relationships. And people, because you do great business, or people have embraced you because on the confidentiality side, they can trust you with their opinion. And sometimes radio stations or program directors, even mixers, they don't want to deal with an artist that they don't know.
Right.
And I don't blame them, because sometimes, an independent artist who's never had any tutoring or any kind of grooming about the business, period.
Right.
They don't know how to approach somebody.
Right.
Sometimes and I get it. I totally get it. I've worked with independent artists who came right out of the hood, right out of the streets. Some were dope boys. Some were funded by athletes or whatever. But nobody's grooming them into the right direction. Me growing up in the Bay Area, I grew up around an independent culture of artists and record labels. I think I told you earlier, the first record I ever promoted was for Sway and King Tech, and this is in 1990. Straight out of college, me and Tech were going to San Francisco State. He's asking the same questions, the same thing you would be asking in this interview now. It's like, how do we get the record service? How do we get the record started? How do we get it to the music director? How do you get to somebody to listen to it?
So how do we?
And it all came down to the fact, what I had to understand is that, and I started at the ground level, is that, it's all about the relationship. And if I can't get the relationship on that level to the program director, let me start with the mixer or to the DJ. And it happens. It just so happens because we've been around the business so many years. The same DJ that you worked in the club or you serviced a 12-inch vinyl back in the '90s, or the same mixer that used to go, try to, take out to or meet him at the club when he gets off the air. You developed a relationship, a lunch, a dinner, or whatever, and you groom those relationships. They turn into program directors. So once again, it comes back to access and relationships, and that relationship is based around, trust,
Right.
and I think.
Well, it sounds like you're answering the question is, how does a radio promoter become tight with program directors and DJs?
Yeah.
But how does an independent artist connect with a you? How do I find someone that's done what you've done and built your network to be a trusted source, to go to programmers and DJs and say,
Right.
this record is hot?
Right.
So how does an artist find a radio promoter to hire
Right.
to introduce his record to radio?
Right. It's interesting. I just, I got a phone call last week about a local pop artist here in Los Angeles, still in high school, and a friend of mine who manages Chief Keef. He's like, "Hey, Samson, I got your recommendation from one of your great friends, one of your best friends, D. Sonoram." He goes, "Like, do you mind taking a meeting?" He goes, "I only want to get the best for this artist. I only want people that I can trust." And D says, "You're the one we can trust. Out here on the West Coast."
Right.
And that was one example. Is like you got a referral from another artist,
Right.
or another friend, or a counterpart or a colleague in the industry. And sometimes it's also from a referral from other artists.
Right.
From this day. So when I started Def Jam in 2004, one of the first artists I ever worked and launched was YG, and Mustard. So we started from the grind, from all the from the beginning until till 2010. But it was YG because they see that you're investing and you're putting the whole sweat equity into their career. Yeah, that was my job as a promotion rep. But at the end of the day, an artist can tell when you're actually going, you're running through walls for them. And I think that your reputation and your work ethic carries a long way. So forever, I've had the relationship with YG. He's always like, you got to call Bryan Samson, or you got to call B. Samson. So it's, when you ask that question,
it's building a reputation.
It's building a reputation, and you got to be consistent. And I always tell people in this business, your word is bond, and you have one opportunity to make sure you make that first impression where you establish your credibility. And if you say you're going to do things, you got to follow through.
What is okay, suppose I'm online, I'm doing my research and due diligence. I'm like, man, I need to get my record broken on radio. I'm following YG, I'm looking at things, I'm connecting the dots. I'm like,
Right.
Oh, that guy Bryan, maybe he's the guy. So suppose someone finally nails you down, because it sounds like there's no yellow pages,
Right.
or no website to find independent
Right.
radio promoters, right?
Right.
So when I do find that guy, what does something like that cost? I'm an independent artist,
Right.
and I'm saying, hey Bryan, my name's Clinton, I got this dope record, it's being played on local radio in my city,
Right.
I'm getting a bunch of plays on SoundCloud and whatnot, I really want to go to the next level and get it on radio. How much money do I need to work at my job? Or how much
Right.
do I need to save
Right,
to
right.
hire someone like you to
Right.
push my record out?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question, because I turned down probably almost 90% of the records that come my way. And
Because you don't want to hurt your relationship.
you want to hurt relationship, and at the end of the day, I'm a person like that really believes in mentoring and also helping people out in the business, because I've been there. When I started in the Bay Area, I didn't have a clue about how to promote records. How can I get this record to KMEL? How can I get it on the radio? And Sway and Tech weren't on the radio yet, so I've always I did the same thing we're talking about now, calling Keith Naffley and Hosh at the time, and calling Alex Mejia when he was the mix show director. I remember that grind, But now in this day and age, is that most of the artists don't have those opportunities, even though they have the resources of the internet, technology, social media. Amazing what they have now compared to what we had to work with back then. The resources were definitely not at the level of what's accessible to the artists now today. But I think the thing is that I pass on a lot of records if I feel, number one, it's aesthetically, I don't believe in the record. On the analytics side, I don't see anything that's active. But then I try to make sure, okay, I tell the artist, like, look, instead of paying me a retainer, let me help you out and see and get you in the right direction, you know. And then if they get into the right direction, if they have a semi-decent record, or sometimes I just tell them I don't believe in the record. But if there's a record that comes to me and sometimes maybe all those numbers aren't face front, or musically I don't feel, you know, it has something that's missing but still has an opportunity, I really believe in like a lot of regional records. I don't like working records nationally, because that means, you know, you're trying to take a new artist from, you know, Oakland, California, all the way across to Washington, D.C., to New York, to Philly, and trying to break them. You know, I really believe in developing artists in their own backyard. So I always tell artists, especially from the Bay Area, when we, you know, first started working with artists, I always tell them, make sure the Bay Area is on your back. And I mean all the DJs, the mixers, influencers, everybody is talking, the first thing that come out is they're talking about your record and talking about your name. So I think that's the biggest thing I try to tell people is like, you know what, make sure you're doing everything in your backyard first before you even call Bryan Samson, and then come back to with me, present me a story, because I'm only as good as how good as your record is and how, you know, how much you've done to really set up your record for yourself. Right. What have you done in the marketplace so you're top of mind for that kid that's standing on the corner?
So say you are doing all the things that you feel are necessary to kind of get your career off the ground. At what point does an artist say, okay, the next level is to go to radio? Like what have you had to have accomplished to say, all right, the only logical next step is to get on radio? Right.
You know, for me, I always try to tell artists, you know, you got to have the record at least, you know, discovery factor number one by the mixers and the DJs. If you're not, you know, in that part of the game in your own backyard, and I can't go to Big Vaughn in San Francisco at KML and he's not talking about just like, you know, I'm gonna have to go back to this. I don't think you're doing your homework. Right. You know, have you at least serviced all the DJs? Right. But you know, in the point where we've gotten to that point, all the stars are aligned. You know, I said, well, okay, let's take a shot. Let's move this record around the West Coast. First things first is make sure, you know, we create relationships for you. Right. And I'm a big believer over the years. I preach this over the years, is the fact that because I feel like I came from a different generation in the music industry. A lot of us promotion reps came into an era where nobody wanted to play rap music on the radio. So we're talking about like, you know, late 80s, early 90s, and everything. They even have, you know, they had a, you know, there was also promoted, we don't play rap music on the radio, no rap music. And I was like, wow, specialty shows. Right. And so I remember that era and that culture where I came from. So we had to work extra hard to make sure those records were, you know, have the opportunities, one on the college level, the mix show level, the club level. So we wanted to make sure that was established. And I tell artists now, it's like, you know what, make sure you have everybody, you know, you're top of mind and your city's on your, you know, has got your back.
So what do you say to an artist who's cracking online? They got 2 million streams, they got all the plays on Spotify, they got millions of views, and no one in their town knows who they are, but they're cracking on the internet. What do you say to that artist when they're like, I need to go to radio? And you're like, yeah, but nobody knows you in your hometown. It's like, doesn't matter. Look at my engagement. Look at all my new fans. Look at all my streams. Yeah. How do you tell that person that they're not worthy for radio?
Yeah, I think what the big misconception most artists have is that the fact is that, you know, and there's not to slight any of them, you know, they probably, you know, they put in the grind. They had to roll up their sleeves to get to that point to become a huge streaming artist, or because of their social media following and fan base, it, you know, incubated, you know, it was just a faster incubation process for them to get to that point. But I think what happens is the fact that, you know, they forgot the one key important part of it is to be able to create relationships in their own backyard. You know, there's no reason why you can't go out and, you know, hand deliver a DJ your record at the club. Nowadays it's a flash drive, you know, or reach out to the DJ in advance.
But what if he doesn't respond?
What if he doesn't respond?
What if the DJ doesn't respond? What if I'm an artist, I'm killing it online, so now I'm trying to reach out to the local DJs and they're not trying to hear me? They're not responding to me.
Oh, that part.
Yeah, that part.
Oh, then that's when you have to call, you know, either myself or the local, you know, there's a lot of people who have street teams, they're independent street promotion reps. You have to go find somebody that has the relationship, and I think that's what it is. I mentioned earlier is that when you're hiring Bryan Samson, or you're hiring a Troy Marshall, or a Jane Dino, or
Dean Shadow,
you're buying their relationships,
right?
But the thing we all preach to the same thing is that we're going to leave you with our relationships. So it's up to you to how you invest and groom and develop that relationship.
Right.
So I always tell people, I'm not selfish. It's that my resources are your resources. You hire me, you can take my resources with you and take your relationship with you. It's not like you can only call, if you want to get them, you only can call through me.
Right.
That's not my style. And at the end of the day, you want an artist that wants to do all of the above, A, B, and C. Develop the relationship, go out there and have work ethic, go out there and follow through, and also go out there and be humble, because at the end of the day, nobody, especially a DJ, you're a DJ, nobody wants to get sweated at 12:30 and somebody saying, yo, you got to put my flash drive, take a listen to the record, put it in.
Right.
Right. Nobody, and a lot of artists don't understand that. Oh, I'm going to buy a bottle for you. You need to play my record.
Right.
No, it doesn't work like that.
Right.
It's about developing relationships and making sure you stay humble and at the same time you build.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I always tell people, it's like for me, and I think sometimes we just had this conversation with some other colleagues over the Grammy weekend. It's like, damn, how the hell are we still around after 25 years? And the one thing is that at the end of the day is that you always got to remember, you don't burn relationships on one record or one artist.
Right. Right. It's
not
about building a long-term relationship. It's about manners, respect, being polite,
being professional,
being humble, gratitude.
Yeah.
And I just mentioned a few minutes ago, what if somebody had millions of plays or millions of streams, but they're still not getting hometown love, or the local station's not looking out for them? Well, a reason that could be is they may not be real plays. They may not be real streams. You may be buying a company to help you get streams, playlisting, or getting views, and unbeknownst to you, they're not real. So in our next video, we're going to talk to somebody about playlisting, the difference between each playlist, how to get on playlist, how the algorithms work, and how to look out for fraudulent companies that are selling you fake streams and plays. You familiar with that at all?
Absolutely.
All right, well, you're going to get familiar with it.